Hi everyone, this is Mindy and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am introducing to you the new STENCIL-MATES in Poly-Glaze and black and white from Gina K Designs. These are an absolutely amazing new product that Gina has come out with that you can use with or without foiling. I am going to walk you through tips and tricks, different designs, how to use them, and create two cards with you along the way. In this new release, there are 4 designs, and each design has a poly glaze and a black and white. They also coordinate with a stencil that Gina has in her website. So let's take a look at the first one. Now, this is the Sunspots, which also has a coordinating stencil. We have the poly glaze on the left, and we have black and white on the right. So the first one here, the black and white, is just that. It is white cardstock with the design printed in black, so no foiling needed. You could just ink blend over the top or use the coordinating stencil to ink blend the design. Now, sometimes this can get a little hard to see on camera, so here is a close-up look of the black and white. Now, the polyglaze, I can't really show you up close. It's going to look like there's nothing there on camera, but I promise you there is a design printed. The polyglaze is kind of like in a light gray ink. You can definitely see it in person. It's just a little hard to see on camera. The polyglaze you can use with your foil, and I will talk more about that foil a little bit later on. This is the Sunspots stencil that you can use to ink blend that design, so it fits perfectly over each of these packs. These come 6 sheets in a pack and are very affordable. Now, I want to quickly share with you how I store my STENCIL-MATES. I put mine in a protective pouch. One of the main reasons is these pouches protect my STENCIL-MATES from any dust particles or, more importantly, dog hair that seems to constantly float on my work surface. The next design we have is the ornamental fans. Once again, there is a pack in Poly-Glaze that you can use for foiling or the black and white. I'm just going ahead and placing these in my storage pouches as I go. Now, our next design that we have is the Lush leaves, once again in Poly-Glaze and black and white. And then our next one here is the thick brush, which is one of my favorites. Now, each of those does have a coordinating stencil. Now, let's talk foil because that seems to be where a lot of confusion comes in. So, here are 2 different kinds of foil that you can use with these STENCIL-MATES. There is the Deco foil in the tube, and then there's also some that come in a pack that are fancy foils from Gina K Designs. She has a huge variety of colors that match her line of ink. There's also some specialty ones from ThermoWeb. So any of these foils will work from ThermoWeb. The main thing is you do not want to use foil that says glimmer foil on it or made for a glimmer machine. Those are not the foils that you want to use for this. Here I'm just showing you that you can take that foil out of the tube. It stretches out into a long piece. And I usually take these out and trim them in half. And then I put them once again in protective pouches. These are stamp pockets that I have. And that once again, you can either keep it in the tube, roll it back up and keep it in the tube. But I like mine in my stamp pockets and everything just fits nicely into my case that I have everything in. Now here we're going to talk about carrier sheets. There are 2 carrier sheets that I want to show you. This first one here is a plastic one that came with my mini Mink machine that I like to use for a laminator. This second one is a carrier sheet from ThermoWeb that I just trimmed down to fit my laminator. These are the carrier sheets. This is what they look like. It just says craft and carrier sheets. I've heard people talk about parchment paper, but I do recommend those carrier sheets from ThermoWeb because they are specifically designed for this. For a laminator, I like to use the mini Mink machine. One of the main reasons is because it heats up super quick. You can use any laminator that you may have on hand and does the job. Now that I've gone through all the real basics of it, I'm going to start with the Sunspots pack of STENCIL-MATES. This particular one I'm starting with has the black lines in it. So I personally like to use my magnetic work surface to help hold my stencil down, and I have the Post-it tape off on the side, which also is holding that paper so it doesn't shift around on me. I'm going to start with my trusty rainbow colors to ink blend this. I lined up the stencil over that, and that is all being held down with that Post-it tape and the magnets. The first color I'm coming in with is Red Velvet. So I am adding kind of a block of that color. It's going to be kind of darker in the center, and then it's going to fade off on each side. I want that fade because I want to combine colors on each side of this. When you're blending with your ink blending brushes, you want to make sure you're also going from right to left and left to right to cover the entirety of the stencil. Now my second color here is a Wild Dandelion. I'm going to come in where it has its own block of color, and then as I kind of veer over to the left-hand side, it's going to blend into that red velvet and give me a beautiful orange. I'm also going to trail that off so that I can mix in my blue. So the next color that I'm going to have is Blue Lagoon. This one, once again, is going to have its own little block of color, and then I can spread it out on each side so that I can kind of transition colors or transition between colors. So as I go off to the right here on that side, it's going to create that green, and then I have room over on the other side for a purple. Now for my purple, I'm going to be using Wild Lilac. And this is such a gorgeous color when combined with the Blue Lagoon. Then as I work my way up to the other side, it's going to mix in with that red. So to me, when in doubt, use a rainbow, but I will have other color combinations that I'm going to be using today. After I have all of these colors blended on, I'm going to remove my magnets and also that Post-it tape to reveal the background. Now keep in mind, this one is the black and white lines. So you can leave it just like this and it would be perfect to trim out, add to a card, or use it as a whole card front. I'll be honest, I have a hard time leaving my backgrounds completely plain white. So I do come back in with my blending brushes and I'm going to blend over those areas using the leftover ink that I have on the brush. That just kind of, to me, helps tone down that white a little bit, make it so not so stark white. But you do you. I will leave some completely white throughout my cards. So occasionally I will come in and buff over the top, whether it's the black and white or the foiling. I really didn't notice that I was picking up a lot of excess ink. So that is up to you if you would like to do that. Now to use the sunspots in the Poly-Glaze, I am going to use champagne foil. So this foil, it's more subtle. I will get to some bolder ones later on. Champagne is one of my favorites. Now with the foil, you have the pretty side, your main side, and then you have kind of more of a dull side. I am using one of Gina's tips and I'm going to buff over the Poly-Glaze sheet and also the back side of my foil. It's honestly really not a bad idea, especially in my house with all of that dog hair that just likes to randomly fly onto my work surface. Then I took that sheet of foil and I placed it over the top of my Polyglaze. So always think of it as everything is facing up. Your Polyglaze is facing up and your pretty side of your foil is facing up. Then I placed it in the carrier sheet. I'm going to make sure that my folded edge of my carrier sheet is what is the first thing going into my laminator. It's mainly because that way the edges don't catch on the rollers. Then I can take that out of the laminator, peel my foil back, and I have this absolutely gorgeous design, not only on the leftover foil, but foiled perfectly onto my cardstock. So I'm going to try and get this in the light. It is crazy shiny in person. I'm going to bring this back over to my magnetic work surface. I had never bothered cleaning my stencil because I'm going to use these same colors in the same spot to give you a real visual comparison. So I'm starting in with that red velvet, then I'll move on to the wild dandelion, down into that blue lagoon, and then over to the wild lilac to give me that complete rainbow of color. And then once I finish that and remove my stencil, I'm once again going to go over everything. Like I said, that's just kind of my jam. I really like to go back over my blended areas. So I'm going to do that with the leftover ink that I have on my brushes. I rarely clean my brushes. I can't even tell you the last time I actually washed my brushes. I will typically just rub it off on a paper towel to get any excess ink off. Then I can give you a side-by-side comparison. So we have the stencil that was printed with the black lines, and then I have the one that I ink blended and foiled. So here, this one, you can see it has all of that shine around the outline, and then the other side has the black line. So one, you can do no foiling, you don't need any specialty machine. The other one, you can add a lot of shine to your projects. Another thing I wanted to cover in today's video is cleaning my stencils. I will be cleaning my stencils right away after I use them. That way I don't have to worry about transferring ink onto any of my projects. Now, I apologize for the eyesore. This is the rag that I use that I place underneath my stencil. I have a spray bottle filled with 90% rubbing alcohol, I think it is. And I spray that over the stencil, and then I just rub my rag over the top, and that cleans off the ink great. Next, I'm going to be using the Ornamental Fans Black and White Stencil Mate and the Poly-Glaze. So I wanted to show you here, this is the Passionate Pink Gina K Designs Fancy Foil. I thought it would be really fun to just try something different instead of just gold and silver. So I took a sheet of that out and I placed it over my stencil mate, and I'm just going to trim off of that excess, and I can place that excess back into that stamp pocket that I carry my foil in. I'll wipe down my STENCIL-MATES sheet and also the back of my Passionate Pink foil with that Swiffer cloth. I don't think I said that before. It is a Swiffer cloth that I use to wipe those down. And then I can place this in the carrier sheet. So this time I'm using the carrier sheet from ThermoWeb. Both of them provided amazing results. One thing I did want to mention is that your laminator is going to pull this through on its own very slowly. All you need to do is place your hand towards the back to kind of catch it. Don't force it out of your laminator. Now, after I move the foil, we have this beautifully pink foiled outline. Now, at this point, you may have the concept of just lining up your stencil over the design. You may need to flip your stencil to get it in the right place, but it is very easy to place it down. I'm going to be going through the blending a little bit quicker. I started with Passionate Pink at the top and Wild Dandelion to the bottom, and when they meet in the middle, I'll get that gorgeous orange. So I did that with my Poly-Glaze, and I'm also going to do those same colors in the same design with the black and white outline. This one might look just a little bit different because I did go a little bit more heavy-handed on it, meaning I just applied a little bit more pressure when I was ink blending. These are the two that I did on screen, but I was playing earlier before the video, and these are a couple backgrounds that I came up with before, and this is where I said I can't leave it alone to be white. This particular one was foiled in gold, so all of them have just amazing results. The next stencil mate that I have is the Lush Leaves. This one I decided to foil in Brilliant Blue, which is super sparkly. I have a lot of color of foil, so I really wanted to start putting them to use. Now, to do my ink blending, I am going to start with the black and white. And for this one, I decided to get a little creative. There was something I really wanted to try. So I'm starting with key lime ink and a mini blending brush. And I am taking that key lime and putting it right down the center of each of the leaves. And I will do that for all of them that's here. The mini ink blending brushes really come in handy for a technique like this. Then I'm going to come in with Blue Lagoon. So for this one, I am going to do the outer edges. And once again, using the mini ink blending brushes, I'm going to do the edge and just slightly work my way to the center. I really wanted that key lime to kind of be like a highlight. And it came in super handy to have these mini brushes. I can't say that word because then I could get kind of two leaves at once almost. But as I went through, I wanted to intensify this color a little bit. So I am going to bring in the navy. So this is a super dark ink. You can see when I tapped off, that is a really dark blue. So I am going to kind of start in between the leaves and just slowly ink blend onto those tips of each of the leaves. So it really helps to kind of get in there in all of those nooks and crannies and blend it in. It's going to look almost like a hot mess right now with the stencil, but once I peel it back, it looks super amazing. Now, I didn't create a card with this one today. Most of the backgrounds, or I should say all of the backgrounds that I don't use in today's video, I am definitely saving, and I am going to turn them into cards later on. So after I finish the blending, I remove the stencil. You can see the centers just really pop, and That was just a really fun technique I wanted to try, and I'm super happy with how that turned out. Now, the one that I foiled in that brilliant blue, I decided to go with more of a tone on tone look. So I cleaned the stencil off screen and I placed it back over my stencil mate, lined it all up, and I started with sea glass ink. So just a really light blue. Now I'm going to come in with turquoise sea. So for this one, I'm going to start more in the center of the card. I wanted it to kind of be an ombre effect going down the front of my card. So adding that turquoise sea, and then to darken it up towards the top, I'm going to be bringing in Tranquil Teal. And you're going to notice when I bring in Tranquil Teal, I do not tap off my brush a lot because I really want to come in with that full force. I noticed I couldn't see a huge difference between the sea glass and the turquoise sea. I probably could have came back over it, but I just intensified that Tranquil Teal a little bit more, and I love that transition. So then, of course, I went back over my areas with my blending brush, just using that leftover ink. That tone on tone looks really amazing with that blue foil. So I definitely want to try more of that. And then here is a side-by-side comparison, which is kind of hard to do because they're completely two different colors, but it gives you an idea. Now my next one is going to be the thick brush, black and white, and Poly-Glaze with its coordinating stencil. Now, with the foil, there is gold, there's champagne, and then there's wild dandelion. And I decided to go with wild dandelion for this one. The wild dandelion I noticed is actually kind of more noticeable because it's got more yellow to it than it does gold. Once again, I wiped down the Poly-Glaze sheet and the back of the foil with that Swiffer cloth, ran that through my laminator, and then I do the peel and reveal to show off all of that bright gold. And this, like I said, the wild dandelion really does stand out a lot more. For ink blending on this one, I am going to start with Passionate Pink at the very top. Then I'll come in with Wild Lilac, blend that up into the pink, kind of have that fade down a little bit so that I can come in with a little bit of Turquoise Sea. And then I'm going to finish it off with Apple Mint, which really needed to get some love in my area because I don't use Apple Mint as much. Once again, I'll go back over those areas with my blending brushes and that leftover ink. And then for my black and white, I'm going to use those same colors except on the bottom, instead of apple mint, I brought in Lucky Clover because I did apply a little bit more pressure to intensify the colors. So this is the comparison of the two. The one on the left is the foil. The one on the right is the black and white. Now I decided to go with these backgrounds to make my cards today, and I am taking a white Jelly Roll pen and I am adding 3 dots to every little stenciled area. This is such a fun technique to really step up your stencils if you just kind of want to do something a little bit different. Just make sure that wherever you're adding your dots, you're not dragging your hand over the top and smearing it. You want to give that white Jelly Roll pen time to dry. So that is a really fun look to add to stencils, and I need to remember to do this more often. So here's a look at that one that has the black and white, and then once again, the one on the left is foiled. So here's a quick look back over the backgrounds that I did today. We have the one on the right is the brilliant blue foil, and the one on the left is that fun inking technique. For our sunspots, we have here the one on the left is the one that's foiled. The one on the right is the black and white. And then we have the ornamental fan. And that one I decided to play with adding some white dots to that as well. So that was a deep dive into the STENCIL-MATES Poly-Glaze and black and white. And now I'm going to finish off a couple cards using one of them. Here's just a quick look at everything that I did in today's video. Now for my cards, I am going to use, I think it was the thick brush. I love this stencil and I love how those colors all turned out. So I trimmed the backgrounds down to 3 3/4 by 5 inches and added them each to some white cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now I trimmed out these ovals from the Master Layouts 1. I did the top layer in white and the bottom layer in a matte gold. I thought that gold would tie in really well with my foiling. Now I'm taking the brand new Gina K Designs foam squares and I'm adding them to the back of that oval shape. That's just going to help pop that up off the front of my card, give it a little bit of lift, And the backers of those foam squares come off super easy. I am glad I bought a couple packs of those. So after I remove the backings, I'm going to place that on the front of the card. Now you're going to notice that I just kind of flipped the card. So one has the pink on top, the other one has the green, just for something a little different. Off screen, I die cut out the Botanical Duo from Black Onyx cardstock. I die cut them 3 times and layered it together with my liquid glue to add a little bit of dimension and stability to it. And then I'm using my tool here to kind of arrange some of these gold pearls. Once again, I thought the gold pearls tied in really nice with the matte gold backing that I have on my oval and also the foiling. I can place down a dot of Connect glue that I have in my fine tip bottle and just pick up my gold pearls with that wax end and place it over the top of that Connect glue. I played around for probably about a half hour trying to figure out where I would put a sentiment, and I just could not bring myself to add anything else to this card. So I can always add something in the inside, whether it's a personal note or stamp a greeting in the inside. I love it just as it is. I think it is very striking this way. Now that concludes my video for you today on the Gina K Designs STENCIL-MATES Poly-Glaze and black and white sheets. I hope you have found this video very helpful and all of the tips and tricks that I've shared along the way. All of my supplies will be listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I'll see you again soon.